A young lawyer in a sleepy Georgia town was startled one day by the approach of a boy, no older than 6, pleading for help to free his mother from jail. Troy, the attorney, felt a surprising pang of emotion. The boy was a pitiful sight, his clothes dusty, his face smudged with dirt, and his eyes reflecting a weariness beyond his years. "Sir," the boy said, his voice soft and tentative. Troy's brow furrowed as he looked down at the child. An unexpected surge of something, protectiveness, made his heart pound faster. "Is this where the lawyers work? Are you a lawyer, too?" the boy asked, pointing a small, hesitant finger towards the law office behind Troy. Troy blinked, momentarily taken aback. Yes. Can you help me?" the boy asked, his voice barely a whisper as he held out a grubby hand. In it, he clutched a banana. "This is all I have," he continued, his eyes filled with earnest hope. "Can you help my mom? I picked this from the farm just to give you." Troy's lips parted in surprise. He was known amongst his colleagues for his soft heart, a trait he often tried to suppress in the cynical world of law. But looking at this child, a wave of compassion washed over him. "What's your name, son? How old are you and where are you from?" Troy asked gently, crouching down to meet the boy's gaze. "Pry," the boy answered earnestly. "I'm 6. Troy smiled faintly at the unusual name. It reminded him of Priam, the last king of Troy, a figure of tragic heroism from the Trojan War. An odd connection, but for some reason he felt a strange kinship with the boy. Perhaps it was just the similarity in their names. "I'm from the next town over," Priam added. Troy blinked in surprise. "You came all the way from the next town? How did you walk?" "I asked people for directions," Priam said quietly. Troy's heart clenched. The next town was at least 6 miles away. He couldn't fathom a child so young walking that far, driven only by a desperate plea to help his mother. "What happened to your mom?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. "She was accused of stealing jewelry," Priam replied, his brow furrowed. "But she told me stealing is bad, so I know she didn't do it." Troy nodded solemnly. "Do you know how dangerous it is for a kid like you to walk that far alone? Did your mom even know you left?" Priam bit his lip and shook his head. "Mom said I should stay home and wait for Auntie She to bring me food. But I miss her. I just want her to come home. I'm really worried," the boy confessed softly. Troy could see in Priam's demeanor a clear indication of good upbringing. The boy was polite, respectful, and clearly loved his mother deeply. This only strengthened his conviction that the boy's mother must be a good person as well. He took a deep breath, offered a reassuring smile, and nodded. "I'll help your mom, Priam," Troy said, finally accepting the 2 bananas the boy had been offering since the beginning. "Have you eaten?" The boy shook his head. "I was just about to eat. Come with me. We'll eat together. I have a lot of questions about your mom. Then I'll take you home." "Okay." The boy's face lit up, a wide, happy grin spreading across his dirt-smudged cheeks. He nodded enthusiastically. Troy wasn't sure what exactly drew him to this child. Perhaps it was pity, or the boy's innocent charm. But he knew, with a certainty that surprised even himself, that he was determined to help. His full name was Troy Sanders, 32 years old, owner of a small but steadily growing law firm in this quiet Georgia town. He had always felt like a piece of himself was missing, a void in his life that dated back to a tragic accident almost 7 years ago. He had been struck by a truck while crossing the street, resulting in a severe head injury and, consequently, selective amnesia. He lost the memories from the last 3 years of his life. He had been 25 then, but when he woke up in the hospital after a month-long coma, he believed himself to be only 22. Ever since the accident, Troy had been haunted by recurring dreams. He saw a woman, her face always just out of focus, and heard himself professing his love for her, her voice responding in kind. Despite the years that had passed, he couldn't place her, couldn't grasp if the dream was a memory or simply a fabrication of his damaged mind. Every attempt to force a recollection only resulted in a throbbing headache. He desperately longed to reclaim those lost 3 years, to understand the life he had forgotten. This longing was what had driven him back to Georgia, his hometown, in the hopes that familiar surroundings might somehow trigger a breakthrough, a key to unlocking the missing pieces of himself. "Hello, babe," Troy greeted softly, answering a phone call that had broken through his reverie. "Aunt Mel said you weren't answering her calls, so I called you instead. She wants to talk to you," said his girlfriend, Fatima, her voice gentle and lilting. Troy smiled faintly. Fatima had always been close to his parents. They had been together for almost a year, and while he still felt the nagging emptiness due to his lost memories, he knew he genuinely liked her. She was from Seattle, where they had met. She was also an attorney just like him. The next morning, Troy woke up early, determined to visit Priam. The night before, he had taken the boy to a diner, filling him with a hearty meal and gently questioning him about his mother. He had learned her name was Aylin Fletcher. According to Priam, they had no other family. It had always been just the two of them. The boy had never known his father, and Aylin worked as a saleslady at a jewelry store in town. Some expensive pieces had gone missing from the shop, and Aylin had been accused of theft. Troy didn't know for sure if she was innocent, but regardless, he had made up his mind to help. "Mr. Troy." Priam greeted him with uncontainable joy and excitement as Troy stepped out of his car. The boy was sitting on the porch steps of the same modest house where Troy had dropped him off the night before. "Good morning, Priam," Troy said with a warm smile. "Let's go." "Wait, where are you taking him?" A woman's voice cut through the air. Troy turned to see a woman approaching them, her arms crossed, her expression a mixture of concern and suspicion. "Pri, you can't just go with anyone," she scolded gently. "Your mom would scold me if anything bad happened to you." "That's Auntie Gigi?" Priam said quickly, his voice filled with reassurance. "He's the lawyer I told you about. He said he'll help Mom. Attorney Troy Sanders." Troy introduced himself, extending his hand to shake the woman's. "I'm she," the woman replied, accepting his hand politely. "I'm a friend of Aylin's, and I've been taking care of Priam for now. It's fine if I come with you, right?" She added quickly. "It's not that I don't trust you, but I hope you understand. I just want to make sure Priam is safe." Troy offered a reassuring smile and nodded. "Sure, let's go." The three of them piled into the car and drove straight to the police station where Aylin was being held. They requested to see her, and while they waited, Troy couldn't help but smile as Priam excitedly chattered about his mother, his voice full of love and pride. "Pri," a woman's voice called out. "Mom," the boy yelled joyfully. Troy turned and saw a beautiful woman walking towards them. He was about to stand, but froze as a sudden, sharp pain throbbed in his head. Her face. There was something achingly familiar about it. A blurry image flickered in his memory, a fleeting glimpse of the smiling lips from his dreams. "Troy?" the woman said softly, her voice laced with uncertainty. "Do you know me?" he asked, startled by the question. She looked puzzled. "He's the attorney, Mom," Priam interjected. "He said he'll help you so you can come home." "I missed you, Mom," Priam continued. The woman stared at Troy, her eyes searching his face. "I'm asking you, do you know me?" He pressed again, his heart pounding in his chest. She swallowed hard, then slowly shook her head. "Ah, no. You just look like someone I used to know." "I'm Aylin Fletcher," she said, extending her hand. Troy looked at her carefully, trying to decipher the emotions hidden behind her composed expression. He wasn't entirely convinced by her answer, but he accepted her handshake. "Attorney Troy Sanders," he said softly. Aylin quickly retracted her hand and avoided his gaze. "Have a seat, Aylin. I need to hear the full story so I know how to help you," Troy said as she nodded and sat down. "So what really happened?" "I've been working at Crystal Gold Jewelers for almost 5 years now," Aylin began, her voice steady but tinged with apprehension. "I was the store supervisor. I know for a fact that Mr. Andrew Lim, my boss, has a mistress, Mary Quinto. She often comes to the shop to buy jewelry. On the day I was accused, she was our only customer. The CCTV shows her taking the jewelry, but Mr. Lim accused me instead. He didn't want her to go to jail and especially didn't want his wife to find out about the affair. I tried to explain, but no one listened. I think they even tampered with the footage. Will I be able to get out of here? She asked, her voice filled with worry. Of course, Troy said without hesitation. The police told me the charge is qualified theft. That's bailable. I'll post bail for now, and we'll go after the real culprit later. Troy saw Aylin visibly relax at his words. Thank you so much, attorney. I promise I'll repay you for everything once I get out. I'll find a new job immediately, Aylin said sincerely. You shouldn't be thanking me. You have a wonderful son, Aylin. You raised him well, Troy said, looking fondly at Priam. What do you mean? Aylin asked, confused. Sorry, girl, Gigi interjected. Yesterday, after I left for work, I didn't know Priam had gone out. When I came home that afternoon, he was gone. I thought he was just playing with the neighbors. Turns out, he walked all the way to town to ask for help. I searched everywhere and only found him when I returned to your house around 9 p.m. He said attorney brought him home. I'm sorry, Mom, Priam said sweetly. Aylin bit her lip, her eyes welling with tears. She couldn't believe her son had done all that for her. If it had been a normal day, she might have scolded him for doing something so dangerous. But now, because of her son, she had hope again. Thank you, sweetheart. But please promise me you won't ever do that again. Didn't I tell you not to go anywhere without me or Auntie She? I promise, Mom. I'm sorry, Priam replied. Troy wasted no time. He handled the paperwork for Aylin's bail. Afterward, they discussed her case a bit more. I'll drive you home, Troy offered. No need, Aylin replied quickly, catching him off guard. I mean, we've already burdened you so much. You've done more than enough for us. Troy studied her carefully. He had noticed all along that she wouldn't look him in the eye. It only made his suspicions stronger, that there was something she didn't want to talk about, something she was avoiding. All right then, Troy said. I need to get back to the office. After that, I'll stop by Crystal Gold Jewelers to see if the nearby shops have any CCTV footage. Aylin nodded. Thank you, attorney, she said softly. Mr. Attorney, if Aunt Lydia gives me another banana, I'll bring you one again, Priam said cheerfully. Troy chuckled and ruffled the boy's hair before heading out. When Troy arrived at his office, he immediately began working on what needed to be done. He even assigned one of his staff to research Andrew Lim and his mistress, Mary Quinto. Before lunch, his team had already gathered the necessary information. They also retrieved several photos of Andrew and Mary together, looking rather affectionate. Troy figured it was more than enough for what he planned to do next. After lunch, he went straight to Crystal Gold Jewelers. First, he visited nearby shops, hoping to find security footage that would show Mary entering the store on the day in question. Once he got hold of such footage, he wasted no time heading straight to the jewelry store where Aylin had previously worked. He was finally face to face with the owner, Andrew Lim, an older man with a large gut, who greeted Troy with clear irritation. What do you want? The man asked gruffly. Troy dropped the photos on the table. Images of Andrew and his mistress. It's simple. I want you to clear Aylin Fletcher's name. A public apology on social media will do. Pay her back wages and cover the bail amount, Troy said sharply. She worked for you for nearly 5 years, and this is how you repay her. You lost a good employee, Mr. Lim. She's a thief, the older man barked. Troy clenched his jaw in irritation, but reminded himself to stay calm, something he had learned as an attorney. Patience was critical when dealing with people like this. I have a copy of CCTV footage showing your mistress entering the shop that day. From 8 a.m. When it opened until 10 a.m. No other customer entered except her. Based on my research, Mary Quinto already has prior records of shoplifting in several malls. Now, if you want me to do this the hard way, I can. I'll file defamation charges against both of you. And what do you think your wife and kids will say when they find out you've been cheating on them for years? Troy spoke in a low, steady voice. Andrew's face paled in fear. Okay, he said, waving his hands. I'll give her the back pay and cover her bail. I'll even post a public apology. Happy? Now we're talking, Troy replied with a smirk. But I want you to do it now. Andrew scowled deeper, but didn't argue. He first posted the public apology on his company's social media pages, then began processing Aylin's back wages. Once Troy got everything he needed, he stood and left the pictures on the desk. Before walking out the door, he turned to Andrew one last time. "By the way, you might want to head home early. I already sent a copy of those pictures to your wife," he said, clearly taunting him. Andrew's eyes widened in horror. "I hate cheaters, Mr. Lim," Troy added. "I despise people who don't know how to be content. I loathe people like you." With that, he walked away. No, he didn't plan to sue the man anymore. He had already achieved what he came for. But that didn't mean he wouldn't find a way to make Andrew pay for what he did to Aylin. As he got into his car, Troy chuckled softly. He found the outcome extremely satisfying. He glanced down at the envelope containing Aylin's back pay. At least now he had a reason to see her again. And maybe, just maybe, she could help him recover some of the memories he had lost. "Do you know something, don't you, Aylin?" he whispered to himself as he drove back to the office. "I saw it in your eyes, in the way you reacted. I know you recognize me. I don't know why you're avoiding me, but I'll do everything I can to figure out what our connection really was." In the following days, Troy was extremely busy with work, so he wasn't able to visit Aylin right away to give her the back pay he had collected from Mr. Lim. But today, with a lighter schedule, he didn't hesitate to head to her house. "Good morning," he greeted cheerfully when he saw Aylin watering the plants in front of their small home. Where's Priam?" he asked, smiling. "He's at school." Aylin replied a bit puzzled. "What are you doing here?" "Oh, right. I got your back pay from Mr. Lim," he said, handing her the envelope. "I've been busy these past few days, so I couldn't bring it to you right away." "That might not be enough to cover the bail you paid," she said softly. "Mr. Lim paid the bail too," he answered quickly. "I assume you saw the public apology." Aylin nodded slowly. "Thank you again. He's been getting a lot of backlash for what happened. Even my old coworkers have started quitting. They say it's hard to hire new staff now. I even heard his wife left him. Honestly, I'm not happy about what happened to him, even after what he did to me. But thank you for helping me," she said sincerely. "I just did what I thought was right," Troy replied. "And besides, he deserved it. None of that would have happened if he were a decent man. Anyway, take this. I know it'll help you start over," he said, handing her the envelope. Aylin hesitated, but accepted it and gave him a faint smile. "Thanks again. If you haven't found a job yet, I could offer you one at my firm. You could be my secretary," Troy said, surprising them both. The truth was, Troy just wanted an excuse to keep seeing her. As he had admitted to himself before, he felt like she could help bring back his lost memories. "I already submitted applications to other companies," she replied softly, avoiding his eyes. "But thank you for the offer." "Why do I feel like you're avoiding me?" he asked seriously. Aylin was startled and turned to him in surprise. "I'm not avoiding you, attorney. I don't have a reason to. If anything, I don't even know how to thank you for helping me and helping us," she said. "You're not avoiding me, but you didn't let me drive you home that day. You're not avoiding me, but you just turned down the job offer. You're not avoiding me, but you won't even let me step inside your yard," Troy said calmly, though his words were tinged with sarcasm. He suddenly realized he was still standing outside the small gate of their home. "Look, I really feel like we've met before, like we knew each other once," he said. "So, if I ever did something bad to you in the past, I'm sorry. But can't we at least be friends? We've never met before, attorney. Like I said, you just look and sound like someone I used to know." Aylin answered again, avoiding his gaze. "You're not a good liar," Troy said gently. "You won't even look me in the eye. Almost 7 years ago, I got into a car accident," he began. He didn't miss the shock that crossed Aylin's face, even though she wasn't looking directly at him. "I know I shouldn't be telling you this. It's not something I'm proud of, but because of that accident, I developed selective amnesia. I woke up thinking I was 22 and I forgot the last 3 years of my life. So, I'm sorry if I seem familiar to you, but I feel like we knew each other before. I really believe that with your help, I might be able to remember everything I lost," he said, his voice full of emotion. Aylin swallowed hard. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Yes, she knew him. Not just knew him, she had known him deeply. She had been avoiding him, yes, because she never thought she'd see him again after almost 7 years. Do you want to hear the truth? Aelin asked. Serious now? Troy's face lit up and he nodded quickly. Aelin sighed and gave a sad smile. I'm the woman you promised to marry. I'm the one you said you'd love forever and stay with through everything. But then you disappeared. We were together for over 2 years, Troy. And just like that, it was all gone, she said, bitterness lacing her words. Troy's mouth fell open. He couldn't believe it. He had assumed she might have been a friend or acquaintance. But now it all made sense. Why she was avoiding him. Why she seemed so hurt. I spent years feeling angry and bitter toward you. And now here you are helping me. Now I know why you vanished. You had an accident. You lost your memory. And yes, I believe you. But I hope you understand why I kept my distance. Even if your reason is valid, it didn't make everything easier. The pain was still there. A lot has changed in the past few years, she said softly. I understand, Troy whispered. He nodded slowly. I'm really sorry if I caused you pain. I was pregnant then, Troy, Aelin said, her voice trembling with tears. Troy's shock deepened. You said you'd only be gone for a few days. You said we'd get married when you returned, but weeks and months passed, and you never came back. I waited like a fool. I even tried to find you in Seattle, though I didn't even know where to start. It was hard, especially when my mother died. I felt completely alone. But I fought hard for Priam, she added. Every time she looked back on what happened and all the hardships she endured, the pain resurfaced. The anger may have faded, but the wound was still raw. My son is Priam, she said in a quiet voice. Troy stared at her in disbelief. Aelin closed her eyes and the tears finally spilled over. She nodded. Troy wiped his face with his hands. He believed fate could be cruel, but he never imagined it had robbed him of so much because of one unfair twist. You don't have to believe me if you don't want to, Aelin said. I believe you, Troy replied without hesitation. That night when Priam came to me, I didn't know why, but my heart started racing. I felt an instant connection with him. I thought things like that only happened in movies and books, but now I think that's what they call a blood bond, and I believe you, Aelin. His voice was full of sincerity as he looked at her soft, beautiful face, still tear-streaked. I don't know all the pain you've been through, he continued, but even though I never meant to leave, I still want to say I'm sorry. From now on, I want to do everything I can to make things right. I want to recover my lost memories. I want to fix everything between us. There's nothing to fix anymore, Aelin said seriously. We're fine as we are. If you want to take a paternity test, that's okay. I'll let you be Priam's father. But like I said, too much has changed over the years. We can be friends, but that's all. Aelin gave him a faint smile and wiped the tears from her eyes. Troy didn't understand why, but something in his chest ached at her words. Still, he knew she was right. So much had changed. For now this was enough. What mattered was that he could see her and Priam. He had never imagined that Priam was actually his son. Days passed and everything gradually fell into place. Even though Troy didn't want it, he had no choice but to respect Aelin's decision to proceed with the paternity test. She didn't want him to think she was lying, even though he didn't doubt her. The result came back 99% match. There was no question. Priam was his son. Aelin formally introduced Troy to Priam as his father. The boy cried so hard he couldn't stop for several. Troy could only cling tighter to Troy's small frame. Pri, sensing his father's distress and the overwhelming emotions swirling around them, mirrored his tears. From that moment onward, a fierce determination ignited within Troy. He couldn't rewind time, couldn't reclaim those precious years stolen by amnesia. Yet, he knew he could fill the present and future with a father's love and devotion. Dad, I got a gold star from my teacher. She said my homework was excellent. Price's face shone with pride one evening as Troy visited. That's my amazing champ. What reward does my superstar want? A trip to the park? Maybe the zoo? Troy asked, his voice thick with affection. Yes, Daddy, Priam shouted with glee. Troy seized every opportunity to whisk Priam away on adventures. He yearned to compensate for his absence, to etch memories into his son's heart. But intertwined with this paternal desire was a lingering, undeniable pull toward Priam's mother. "Dinner's ready. Come join us, Troy," Aelin called out, her voice carrying the warm aroma of home-cooked food. A smile bloomed on Troy's face. In that moment, a sense of belonging washed over him. They felt like a real family, united by an invisible thread. Even though Aelin had firmly established a boundary of friendship, Troy couldn't suppress the flicker of hope, the vision of a future where that might change. As he settled at the table, Troy grinned, recognizing the dish before him. "Beef stew. That's my favorite," he said, surprised by the wave of recognition. "I know," Aelin replied softly, her eyes meeting his. Troy pursed his lips thoughtfully. They had been together for 2 years before the accident. 2 years filled with shared meals, whispered secrets, and building a life together. Of course, she knew his preferences. It made perfect sense that she would prepare something he loved. "Oh, by the way, if you're free tomorrow, perhaps we could take our son out again. He excelled in school today, and I'd love to celebrate his achievements," Troy suggested casually, attempting to mask the longing in his voice. "I have work tomorrow," Aelin replied, her tone polite but firm. "Maybe another time." She had recently landed a coveted position as a supervisor at a trendy clothing boutique in the mall. Her 2-year vocational degree, coupled with nearly 5 years of supervisory experience from her previous employer, had made her a desirable candidate. "So, when you're at work, Priam's home alone?" Troy asked, a hint of concern lacing his voice. "I leave him with Aunt Lydia. She has grandkids his age, and they attend the same school and play together constantly. Price not a difficult or unruly kid, so he's easy to care for," Aelin explained, reassuringly. Troy nodded slowly, absorbing the information. "If I were your husband, I wouldn't let you work," he blurted out without thinking, the words tumbling from his lips like a runaway train. An electric current crackled in the air. Both of them froze, their eyes locking in surprise and a shared, unspoken recognition. It wasn't an impossible scenario. They could have been married, building a life together, if fate hadn't intervened with his amnesia. The look of astonishment on their faces was palpable. "I mean, I'd want you to focus on raising Priam," Troy stammered, struggling to regain his composure. His heart hammered against his ribs, and he couldn't decipher why the mere thought of being married to her felt so right, so complete. Aelin remained silent, her gaze fixed on him. Just then, Troy's phone buzzed insistently. The caller ID flashed Fatima's name, and a wave of guilt crashed over him. In the whirlwind of the past few days, he had completely erased the existence of his girlfriend. He had been so consumed by the moments with Priam and Aelin. "Excuse me, I have to take this," he said gently, rising from the table. Aelin didn't utter a word, but her eyes followed him as he walked away, a mixture of curiosity and apprehension swirling within them. For reasons she couldn't articulate, she found herself smiling faintly. Her heart skipped a beat because of Troy's impulsive statement. "Mom, why are you smiling?" Pry asked sweetly, interrupting her thoughts. "Are you happy Daddy's here with us?" She coughed awkwardly, attempting to regain her composure, and adjusted her seat. "Eat your food, sweetheart," she said quickly, changing the subject, even though she knew her son hadn't done anything wrong. "Mom, I'm happy," Priam said softly, his voice filled with a child's simple joy. "My classmates always said I didn't have a dad, but now I do." "I'm happy you're happy, sweetheart," was all Aelin could muster. Her voice choked with emotion. They resumed eating, a lingering warmth permeating the atmosphere. A little while later, Aelin looked up as the door opened and Troy re-entered the room. Something came up. "I have to go," he said, addressing both Aelin and Pry. "I'm sorry, son, but Daddy will make it up to you tomorrow. Okay?" he added lovingly, kissing Priam on the forehead. "Take care," Aelin said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Troy glanced at her, a flicker of surprise in his eyes, then smiled warmly. He was genuinely pleased to hear those words from her. You two take care as well. And if anyone knocks on the door that you don't recognize, don't open it. Okay? He reminded them, a protective instinct surfacing. Aylin pursed her lips slightly and nodded in agreement. I'll see you tomorrow, he added, his voice laced with a hint of tenderness that made Aylin's heart flutter. She couldn't discern if it was merely her imagination, but his voice seemed to carry a depth of emotion that hadn't been there before. As soon as Troy departed, Aylin instinctively pressed a hand to her chest. Her heart was still racing, pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. She couldn't recall the last time she had experienced such a visceral reaction. Probably not since the day he proposed to her almost 7 years ago. She had adamantly insisted on remaining friends, burying her own desires beneath a wall of practicality. So why was her heart betraying her now, reacting with such unbridled emotion? After they finished dinner, Aylin diligently cleaned up and helped Pry wash up so they could prepare for bed. But that night, sleep eluded her. Troy's words, his presence, continued to haunt her thoughts, replaying in her mind like a broken record. Bye, Miss Aylin. See you tomorrow, one of Aylin's co-workers said with a friendly smile as they clocked out after their shift. Take care, Aylin, another voice called out. She turned slightly and offered a polite smile to the man who had addressed her. Mr. Jake, is there something you need? She inquired. I just wanted to ask how work's been going. Are the staff treating you okay? No headaches yet? Jake said with a genuine grin. She had only known and worked with Jake for just over a week. However, he had consistently demonstrated nothing but kindness and consideration, not only towards her but to all their co-workers. She had confided in him during the interview about the ordeal she had endured at her previous job, the false accusation of theft that had tarnished her reputation. Still, Jake had placed his trust in her, seeing past the accusations and hiring her anyway. Well, it's a bit challenging to adjust at first, Aylin answered politely. There are some tasks I didn't perform before, but nothing in life is easy, right? Everything requires hard work. I'm getting used to it. I'm glad you're enjoying what you're doing, Jake replied, his voice filled with sincerity. Aylin didn't have the opportunity to respond because a familiar voice suddenly called out her name. When she turned, she was surprised to see Troy standing casually, leaning against his car while holding Pry. We've been waiting for you, Troy said gruffly, his brow furrowed. Oh, I didn't realize you were married, Jake said in surprise. Not that it matters. It just didn't come up during the interview. He's not my husband, Mr. Jake, but he is the father of my son, Priam, Aylin replied calmly, attempting to defuse the situation. Oh, okay, Jake said, giving a short nod, his expression neutral. Anyway, if you ever need anything, just let me know. All right, Aylin gave another small nod in acknowledgement. I'll see you tomorrow, Aylin, Jake said as he turned and walked away. Once he was out of earshot, she immediately approached Troy and their son. What are you two doing here? She asked, a mixture of surprise and annoyance in her voice. We've been here a while. Didn't I say I'd take our son out today? Troy retorted, his tone tinged with irritation. Aylin frowned, confused by his sudden shift in mood. Is that your boyfriend? Troy asked, his eyes narrowed slightly. Mr. Jake? No, Aylin replied quickly, her cheeks flushing. Mom, do you have a boyfriend? Pry asked innocently, his eyes wide with curiosity. Shouldn't Daddy be your only boyfriend? Aylin's mouth fell open in astonishment. Mom doesn't have a boyfriend, she answered quickly, shooting Troy a sharp glare. He was smirking now, clearly enjoying her discomfort. She desperately wanted to scold him for making such inappropriate comments in front of Priam, but she restrained herself. The last thing she wanted was to prolong the conversation and draw further attention to the matter. Let's go, Troy said with a grin, placing Priam in the back seat of the car. Aylin sighed inwardly and was about to sit in the back seat herself when Troy suddenly spoke again, his voice firm. I'm not a taxi driver, Aylin. Get in the front seat, he insisted, his eyes sparkling with mischief. She pouted slightly but complied, sliding into the passenger seat. Do you have bipolar disorder? She asked, fastening her seatbelt. Huh? Troy looked genuinely confused. You're grumpy 1 minute, smirking the next, then grumpy again. What's your problem? She asked, her tone clearly baffled. I'm not grumpy. This is just how I am, Troy replied casually, shrugging his shoulders. Aylin shook her head and decided not to pursue the argument further. During the drive home, she listened intently to Priam's enthusiastic stories about the adventures he and his dad had shared throughout the day. It was one of her most cherished pastimes, listening to her son's animated chatter. She was acutely aware that the day would come when he would grow older, and these precious moments would fade into distant memories. She resolved to savor every single second of it. Aylin, can I ask you a favor? Troy said gently later that evening as they both sat outside on the porch, enjoying the cool evening breeze after dinner. Pry was inside, engrossed in playing with the new toys Troy had bought for him. What is it? She asked, her eyes fixed on the distant horizon. You're off work tomorrow, right? Aylin nodded in confirmation. While Priam's at school, would you consider coming with me to visit the places we used to frequent? I mean, perhaps it'll help me unlock more of the memories I've lost, Troy said, his voice unusually quiet and vulnerable. Aylin paused, caught completely off guard by the unexpected request. She couldn't pinpoint why, but the mere thought of revisiting their shared past filled her with a sense of trepidation. It had been years since those memories had surfaced, carefully buried beneath layers of practicality and self-preservation. And even though she constantly reassured herself that she had moved on, she harbored a deep-seated fear. A fear that delving into the past might stir emotions she wasn't prepared to confront. Still, she couldn't bring herself to reject his plea outright. Since they had reconnected, Troy had consistently treated her with kindness and respect, going above and beyond to be a loving father to Priam. Okay, was all she managed to say, her voice barely audible. Troy's face immediately lit up with a grateful smile. Thank you, Aylin, he said sincerely, his eyes shining with a mixture of hope and apprehension. The next day, Troy arrived early at their house, eager to embark on their journey down memory lane. They first dropped Pry off at school, then set off together. The first place Aylin suggested they visit was the university they had both attended, the very place where their paths had initially crossed. You were a graduating student, she began, her voice laced with nostalgia. You were sitting right here, playing the guitar, and my friends and I were sitting on the bench across from you, completely captivated by your music. She gestured towards a row of weathered benches nestled beneath the shade of ancient oak trees inside the university quad. My friends were particularly giddy, especially when you suddenly walked over and asked for my number. I was only 22 then, full of dreams and aspirations. Why can't I remember any of this? Troy muttered, frustration evident in his voice as he rubbed his forehead, attempting to conjure up a flicker of recognition. I mean, I vaguely remember being 22 and preparing to enroll for the upcoming school year. He fell silent, straining to recall something, anything, but ended up wincing in pain as a sharp throbbing sensation erupted in his head. Are you sure you're okay? Perhaps this wasn't such a good idea if it's just causing you headaches, Aylin said with genuine concern, her hand reaching out instinctively to touch his arm. Troy couldn't explain why, but her expression of concern triggered a warm sensation within him, a feeling of being cared for and cherished. I'm okay. It's just that I desperately want to remember everything I've lost. That way, maybe I'll finally stop feeling like there's a crucial piece missing, a void that I can't seem to fill. Aylin offered him a faint smile in response, her eyes filled with a mixture of empathy and uncertainty. They lingered at the university for a few more minutes, absorbing the atmosphere and hoping for a spark of recognition, before deciding to venture downtown to a plaza they used to frequent. We always hung out here, Aylin said softly as they strolled slowly through the bustling plaza, weaving their way through the crowds of shoppers and tourists, especially when you were courting me. This was the site of our first date, she added with a shy laugh. We ate cheap street food because you were meticulously saving money. You said you didn't want to burden your parents with your expenses, that you wanted to earn everything on your own, a testament to your independence and determination. This was also where you first asked me to be your girlfriend, under the soft glow of the streetlights, and where you first saw me cry. It was shortly after my dad died unexpectedly from a heart attack. You were here, holding me in your arms, offering comfort and solace when I needed it most." She paused, her voice growing soft and tinged with sadness as the memories washed over her. "And months later, when we received the devastating news that my mom had a brain tumor, I cried again, right here in your arms. I was absolutely terrified, Troy. We had just lost Dad, and then we were confronted with this terrifying diagnosis. But you were there, a constant source of strength and support. You held me and whispered words of encouragement, telling me that she'd be okay, that she'd make it through, that she'd live to see us get married, to witness our children grow." "I'm so sorry," Troy said quietly, his voice thick with emotion as the weight of it all began to sink in. Aylin forced a smile and shook her head dismissively. "You don't have to apologize. It's been a long time. I've learned to let it go," she said, although she wasn't entirely certain if she was being completely honest with herself. She had to remind herself that they were there to help Troy regain his memories, not for her to wallow in past pain and sorrow. But the two were inextricably linked, intertwined like the roots of an ancient tree. "After you graduated and started law school, you told me that becoming a lawyer was your lifelong dream, the culmination of years of hard work and dedication. One night, I waited for you here," Aylin said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "And this was the spot where I told you I was pregnant, the news that would change our lives forever." Troy's eyes widened in surprise. "This spot, in front of this church," she continued, her voice trembling slightly. "That's the night I proposed to you." Troy cut in suddenly, his voice filled with an urgency that startled Aylin. "Ow!" Troy groaned, clutching his head as he winced in agony. He squeezed his eyes shut and sank onto the cold pavement, his body racked with pain. "Troy, are you okay?" Aylin asked in alarm, rushing to his side as he visibly struggled with the sharp pain. "I told you this wasn't a good idea," she said anxiously. "You shouldn't force yourself to remember, especially if it's causing you this much pain." She felt helpless, unsure of what to do. It was evident that he was suffering immensely, and she was genuinely frightened for him. Then, she heard him speak so quietly, his words barely audible. Aylin froze as Troy slowly raised his head, his eyes filled with tears. "There was no ring," he whispered, his voice laced with devastation. "So, I improvised. I made one out of a straw from the drink we had that night, twisting and folding it until it resembled a makeshift symbol of our love. I promised you we'd start a family, that I'd devote my life to taking care of you and our child, that we'd name the baby Priam, a name we both cherished." Troy broke down completely, his body trembling with uncontrolled sobs. "Oh God, I missed you so much," he cried, his voice cracking with anguish. "I'm so sorry, Aylin. I'm truly, deeply sorry." He nearly fell to his knees in front of her, consumed by remorse and regret. He had been right. With Aylin's help, the fragmented memories had finally coalesced, forming a complete picture of their shared past. Somehow, miraculously, everything came rushing back, flooding his mind with a torrent of emotions. This was the plaza, the church, the very place where he had made those sacred promises to the woman he loved. He hadn't intentionally broken those vows, but fate had dealt him a cruel hand. Even though it wasn't his fault, the guilt and shame were almost unbearable. "I promised to take care of you and our baby," he choked out, his voice filled with self-reproach. "I said I'd be back right away, but I never came back. I failed you." That night, after he had proposed to Aylin beneath the soft glow of the streetlights, he had left to visit his parents in Seattle, eager to share the joyous news that he was going to be a father. He had invited Aylin to accompany him, but she had reluctantly declined, unable to leave her ailing mother behind. And while he was in Seattle, the catastrophic accident had occurred, shattering his life into a million pieces. He vaguely remembered lying on the pavement, numb and motionless, staring blankly at the star-studded sky, his thoughts consumed by one person, Aylin, the woman he loved more than anything in the world. "It's not your fault, Troy," Aylin whispered, her own tears streaming down her face. She didn't know how to comfort him as he continued to cry, overwhelmed by regret and sorrow. So, she did the only thing she could, the only thing that felt natural and right in that moment. She wrapped her arms around him tightly and let her own tears fall freely, too. "Are you okay now?" Aylin asked gently as they returned to Troy's house, her voice filled with concern. She handed him a glass of water, which he gratefully accepted. "Yes, thank you," Troy replied softly, then sighed deeply, his shoulders slumping with exhaustion. Imagine years of desperately trying to remember, and nothing worked. It's like we were pawns in a game orchestrated by fate. But I was right. You were the key, the only one who could unlock my memories and bring me back to myself. It's as if destiny orchestrated our reunion for this very purpose. "You were in so much pain earlier," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "I didn't know what to do. But I'm truly happy for you, Troy. I'm glad you finally remembered what you were yearning to remember." "Aylin," he said, his voice laced with guilt and remorse. "I know I've apologized countless times, but I'm genuinely sorry for all the things I failed to do, for not being there for you and our son. You were right. We didn't choose what happened, but I still feel utterly wretched. I desperately want to make things right, to compensate for my absence and prove myself worthy of your forgiveness. I want to make it up to you and to Priam, to build a life filled with love and happiness. Do you think we could still work this out?" Troy asked, his eyes filled with sincerity and hope. Aylin swallowed hard, her heart pounding against her ribs. The truth was, a part of her desperately yearned for that, too, to rekindle their love and create the family she had always dreamed of. But she was understandably scared, hesitant to jump back into a relationship without carefully considering the potential consequences. It had only been a few weeks since they had reconnected, and a lifetime since they were truly together. She didn't even know if he still genuinely loved her or if his feelings were merely a byproduct of the overwhelming guilt and the sudden resurgence of his memories. "I think we should take things slow," she said finally, her voice measured. "Like I've said before, a lot has changed, and we both need time to process everything that's happened. If you ask me honestly, yes, I'd love to give Priam the complete family he deserves, a stable and loving environment where he can thrive. But I don't want us to hurt each other if it turns out that you're only experiencing temporary confusion or disorientation because your memories just resurfaced. So, maybe we should just take our time, proceed cautiously, and see where things go." Troy smiled gently and nodded in agreement, a wave of relief washing over him. "You're still the same, Aylin. Always selfless, always thoughtful, never taking advantage of anyone. You're right. We both have unresolved issues and emotions that we need to sort out, especially me. I'm sorry if I was too impulsive or demanding." Troy suddenly thought of Fatima, his current girlfriend, and a pang of guilt stabbed at his heart. He had to admit that he had been genuinely drawn to her kindness and intelligence, which was why he had pursued a relationship with her in the first place. Despite their demanding schedules, their relationship had been relatively smooth and uncomplicated. But now, the thought of causing her pain and heartbreak made him feel miserable and ashamed. "Come on, let's go pick up our son," Troy said with a soft, encouraging smile, attempting to mask his inner turmoil. Aylin returned a small smile and nodded in agreement. They stood up from the couch, ready to head out and retrieve Priam from school, but both froze when the door suddenly swung open. Troy was completely stunned to see Fatima standing there, her eyes narrowed slightly. Aylin's brow furrowed as she noticed Troy's reaction, sensing the tension that had suddenly filled the room. "Fatima, what are you doing here?" Troy asked, his voice laced with surprise and a hint of apprehension. "Didn't I say I'd come visit you this weekend?" Fatima replied, her voice flat. "Oh, you have company?" Fatima said with a raised brow, glancing at Aylin with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. "Hi, I'm Fatima, Troy's girlfriend." "Aylin," she replied, extending her hand to Fatima, Troy's friend. A pang of something akin to jealousy resonated within Aylin, catching her off guard. Troy had emphasized that they would take things slow, that they'd gradually attempt to rebuild their relationship, But now she was discovering that he had been in a committed relationship all this time, a secret that he had deliberately kept from her. She couldn't suppress the wave of disappointment that swept over her. "I'll leave you two to talk," she said quickly, her voice strained. She knew they needed to have a private conversation, to sort out their tangled emotions and decide on the future course of their relationship. She didn't wait for either of them to speak, and hastily exited the house to pick up Priam from school. "I don't believe you're just friends," Fatima said as soon as Aylin was out of earshot, her voice unwavering. "Are you cheating on me, Troy?" "Of course not," Troy said immediately, his voice filled with sincerity. "But I have something important to tell you, something I should have told you sooner." "Go ahead." "I'm listening," she replied, her arms crossed defensively, clearly not convinced. "You already know that I suffered selective amnesia after my accident," Troy began, his voice measured. Fatima nodded in agreement, her eyes fixed on him. "That's why I came back here, hoping to find the missing pieces of my life, to fill the void that has been haunting me for years. I felt like something was missing, like I wasn't whole. I desperately wanted to remember everything, to reclaim the memories I had lost." "Just get to the point, Troy," she said, her frustration growing. "One night, a little boy came to me asking for help. He said his mom was falsely accused of theft. His name is Priam. His mother is Aylin. When I saw Aylin's face, something stirred within me, a faint glimmer of recognition. I asked for her help, and she patiently guided me through my past. That's how I learned the truth, Fatima. She was my girlfriend before I left for Seattle, the woman I was deeply in love with. Our relationship was the most significant and cherished memory of my life. Right before the accident, Fatima, her eyes widened in shock. And the boy, he's my son. Before I left for Seattle, I proposed to her, promising her a lifetime of love and happiness. She was pregnant with our child. I vowed to return as soon as possible, but I never did because of the accident. For years, I had no idea that someone was waiting for me, that I had a child, a son who deserved my love and presence. I remember everything now," Troy added emotionally, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm deeply sorry, Fatima. I never intended to hurt you, but I needed to be honest with you, to tell you the truth. I didn't want to be unfair to you, to continue living a lie." Fatima shut her eyes tightly, attempting to compose herself, and forced a small smile. "When you were courting me, I always sensed that something was missing, a piece of the puzzle that wasn't there. Even when we became a couple, it still felt like something was off, a persistent undercurrent of longing. You always attributed it to your lost memories, so I remained patient, hoping that you would eventually find what you were looking for. But you know what? I think it wasn't just your mind that was trying to remember, Troy. It was your heart, yearning for something it couldn't quite grasp. We've been together for almost a year, Troy, and you never treated me badly. You were always kind, considerate, and supportive. I'm grateful for that." She took a deep breath, bracing herself for what she was about to say. "Let's break up, Troy," she whispered, her voice filled with a mixture of sadness and resignation. Troy was speechless, overwhelmed by a flood of conflicting emotions. He knew he had unintentionally caused her pain, and the guilt gnawed at him relentlessly. You may have missed years of your son's life, but you still have countless years ahead of you. Do everything in your power to make them happy, to create a loving and supportive environment for them to thrive. I sincerely wish you the best, Fatima said, her voice choked with emotion. Troy swallowed hard as Fatima walked over and hugged him tightly, offering a gesture of forgiveness and understanding. I'm truly sorry, Fat, he said weakly, his voice filled with remorse. You don't have to be sorry. None of this was your fault. Fate played with you, manipulating your life in ways you couldn't control. But fate also brought you back together, reuniting you with the woman you were destined to be with. Out of all the people in this town, it was your son who sought you out for help, a sign that fate had intervened. That means something, she said with a sad smile, her eyes glistening with tears. Troy was in awe of her remarkable kindness and understanding, even in the face of her own heartbreak. Fatima had always possessed a sharp intellect and a compassionate nature. Now, He felt more ashamed than ever for the pain he had caused her. At least I was the one who ended it, she joked lightly, attempting to lighten the mood. You didn't leave me. I released you, setting you free to pursue your happiness. But seriously, Troy, I know you genuinely care, and I know that you will always value her. I'll be okay. Like I said, you deserve to be happy, and you'll only truly find happiness if you're with them, with Aelin and Priam. So, please don't worry about me. Just follow your heart, wherever it may lead you. I'm truly sorry, Fat. And thank you, Troy whispered, his voice barely audible. Well, drop me off at the airport when you have time. It's the least you can do, she teased with a smile, attempting to inject some humor into the situation. She left afterward to call her parents and share the news about everything that had transpired, seeking their comfort and support. Though Troy felt incredibly guilty for causing her pain, he didn't want Fatima's generosity and understanding to be in vain. And so, he became even more certain of what he had to do. Rebuild his family, to create the life that fate had cruelly stolen from him. Hi, flowers for you, Troy said that evening with a nervous smile as he arrived at Aelin's modest home. A bouquet of her favorite lilies clutched. Now I want to make it up to you, to our son. That's exactly what she told me to do, too, he confessed, his voice laced with sincerity. I believe you, Troy, Aelin replied softly, her gaze meeting his. Deep down, she knew he wasn't spinning a tale. There was a time she knew him better than she knew herself. You said we'd take things slow, right? Troy asked, a flicker of hope dancing in his eyes. Aelin offered a small, hesitant smile and nodded. In that case, he began, a playful tone creeping into his voice. Can I court you again? Like back in the day? Aren't we a little too old for all that courting stuff? Aelin teased, a hint of amusement in her eyes. Troy grinned, his eyes sparkling. Then just say yes now and marry me right away. Let's skip the formalities. She rolled her eyes, but a soft laugh escaped her lips. That's not what I meant, she clarified. You don't have to court me again. Let's just see where life takes us. We already have a child to consider, remember? I don't know exactly where life will lead us, Troy admitted, his voice softening. But one thing I'm absolutely sure of is this. I want to take you to the altar. I want to marry you and create a home, a sanctuary, where you, me, and our son can finally be a complete family, a place we can truly call our own. Aelin bit her lower lip, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. She was clearly moved by his words, his heartfelt declaration. Words seemed to fail her, and she fell silent, smiling as he playfully teased her again, trying to lighten the emotional weight of the moment. The days that followed were a whirlwind of joy and new beginnings. A few days later, Troy received the shock of his life when his parents suddenly returned to Georgia, completely unaware that they were now grandparents. When they found out, they were shocked and overcome with remorse for not being there for Troy. They apologized to Aelin, explaining that they had no idea Troy had left someone behind, that there was a child and mother waiting for him. Aelin, ever forgiving, told them it was okay. After all, no one had wanted things to turn out the way they did. Despite the initial emotional turmoil, the reunion went surprisingly smoothly, bringing a sense of wholeness and happiness to everyone involved. Troy, your parents are absolutely smitten with Priam, Aelin exclaimed, watching as his mother chased their grandson around the yard, a mischievous glint in her eyes. Mom, Dad, when are you planning on heading back to Seattle? Troy asked, watching Pry munch on a chocolate bar beside him, a smear of chocolate adorning his cheek. Well, his mother began, a sly smile playing on her lips. If you'll let us take Priam back with us, we'll leave right now. I thought you were still busy courting Aelin, his dad added with a knowing grin. Wouldn't you want more alone time with her? We'd be happy to watch your son. Troy paused, considering their words. He realized they had a point. He had been diligently courting Aelin for the past week, pulling out all the stops to win her back. He had promised himself he would be patient, to wait as long as it took for her to say yes. But the truth was he was growing impatient. Not because he was tired of the pursuit, but because he longed to simply hold her, to kiss her. Every time he looked at her lips, It took every ounce of his willpower to resist the urge. "You know what? You're right," Troy replied to his father, a mischievous smile spreading across his face. "I'm heading out. We might not be home for dinner." With that, he quickly left the house, grabbing his keys, and drove to the mall, his mind already racing with plans to surprise Aylin after her shift. When he arrived, he parked the car and waited near the entrance, his eyes scanning the crowd. A few minutes later, he spotted her walking out with Jake, her manager. They were laughing together, their heads bent close in conversation. A wave of jealousy washed over Troy as he watched them. Jake wasn't doing anything wrong, and neither was Aylin. But that didn't stop the feeling from creeping in, a knot forming in his stomach. "So why do you look grumpy again?" Aylin asked with a chuckle as she approached, her eyes sparkling with amusement. "You look too happy with that ugly guy," Troy muttered, his voice laced with mock annoyance. "Are you jealous?" she teased, playfully bumping her shoulder against his. "Besides, Mr. Jake is quite handsome, you know." Troy scowled harder, crossing his arms over his chest. "But you're still more handsome," she added in a whisper, leaning closer to him. Troy's eyes widened at her words, his heart skipping a beat. The jealousy he had felt just moments ago vanished without a trace, replaced by a wave of giddy happiness. "Say that again." "I didn't quite catch it," he said, pretending not to have heard her compliment. Aylin giggled and opened the car door, settling into the driver's seat. "I said, I'm hungry. Let's go get something to eat," she replied with a laugh, trying to hide the blush that was creeping up her neck. Troy had planned to take her straight home, but he grinned when he realized they were heading toward the plaza instead, the place where their love story had first begun. They strolled around, hand in hand, eating street food and chatting like they used to, the years of separation melting away with each passing moment. "Why do you always bring me here?" Aylin asked curiously, tilting her head to look at him. "Because this is where I first courted you, and this is where you said yes," Troy replied with a grin, his eyes twinkling. "Maybe, just maybe, you'll say yes again if I keep bringing you back." "You haven't even asked me anything yet," she pointed out with a smile. "Can we be together again?" he asked quickly, impulsively blurting out the question that had been burning in his heart. "Please, I just want the right to be jealous, the right to hug you, to kiss you. We never really broke up," he said softly, his voice filled with longing. "Fate just tore us apart. But if it makes you feel better, then yes, we can be together again. Let's give us another shot." Troy froze, stunned. Had he heard her correctly? When he realized she meant it, he let out a loud cheer, causing a few nearby people to turn their heads in surprise. He didn't care. Without hesitation, he leaned in and kissed Aylin, a long, lingering kiss that he had been wanting to do for weeks. "Thank you for giving us another chance, Aylin," he whispered against her lips after the kiss. "This time, I'll keep every promise I make, and I'll never leave you again. I know you just said yes, and I know everything's been moving fast," Troy said after pulling back from their kiss, his voice filled with emotion. "But it's been almost 7 years since I was last with you and our son. I don't want to waste any more time." Aylin frowned slightly, confused by what he meant. Her eyes widened in shock when Troy reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He opened it to reveal a gold ring with a sparkling diamond, and slowly knelt down on one knee in front of her. "Back then, I couldn't afford something like this, so I gave you a ring made out of a straw from our drink," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Right here, in front of the same church, I asked you to marry me, and that's what I want to do again. Marry me, Aylin. Let's build a family together. Let's make it official this time." Tears welled up in Aylin's eyes as she nodded repeatedly, unable to speak. "Yes, Troy," she finally managed to say, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." After he slipped the ring on her finger, Troy stood up and kissed her again, sealing their commitment with a passionate embrace. They were both startled when the people around them started clapping and cheering, their spontaneous applause filling the air. Only then did they realize they had drawn quite a crowd, all witnesses to their beautiful moment. Troy laughed softly, his heart overflowing with happiness. Aylin, overwhelmed with shyness, buried her face in his chest, hiding from the attention. He wrapped his arms around her and held her close, whispering words of love and reassurance in her ear. The following days were filled with joy and excitement as they began to plan for their upcoming wedding. Troy invited Aylin and Priam to move in with him, and the mother and son happily agreed, eager to start their life together as a family. And so, their life together officially began. Of course, like all couples, they had their share of disagreements and misunderstandings, but they always worked things out, communicating openly and honestly, and never letting any issue fester. Each night, they went to bed side by side, smiling, feeling content, loved, and complete. Almost 2 years later, they were blessed with another child, a beautiful baby girl they named Prim. With the arrival of their second angel, their family grew even happier and stronger, their love deepening with each passing day. Looking back, it was clear that fate had played a cruel game, testing them, pushing them to the brink. It had thrown obstacles in their path, made them feel broken and lost. But fate, in its mysterious way, had also found a way to bring them back together, to give them what was truly meant for them. If Troy had once felt like something was missing, a void in his heart, now he felt complete, overflowing with happiness and gratitude for the blessings he had received through the family he had built with Aylin. If Aylin had once believed she was all alone, struggling through life, now she was surrounded by overwhelming love, supported by the unwavering presence of her partner and children. Troy had shown her that she was never truly alone, and that he, along with their 2 children, would always be by her side. Their love a constant source of strength and comfort. They felt like they had nothing more to ask for. Their life was filled with contentment, joy, and an abundance of love. When you think about it, their love story was simple, yet it was full of meaningful lessons, lessons that resonated deep within their hearts. Lessons about the importance of family, about perseverance through pain and hardship, about forgiveness, and about the enduring power of love. And those lessons, they knew, they would carry with them always, guiding them through whatever future trials they might face. Their bond unbreakable, their love eternal. The end. Thank you so much, guys, for watching this interesting story. This is your bestie, Mr. Hope, and I'll appreciate if you drop me a nice comment. Thank you, and I'll see you soon.